Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm sitting down with Amber Ginn, an IBCLC, and one of the most incredible breastfeeding support people you can find. She's also one of my Catalyst Queen Mastermind clients, and I just adore her. Amber is going to share the raw, powerful story of having her son at 15 years old and how that experience and the help of one person lit the fire for her career in lactation. From teen mama to breastfeeding expert, her journey is the definition of turning pain into purpose. If you've ever questioned if your past disqualifies you, it does not. And Amber and myself both prove that your story is your superpower. So let's dive in. Good morning, sweet mamas. I am so happy that you're here. My guest today is Amber Ginn, and I always get tongue-tied, Amber, when I say it, but IBCLC, I did it. And she's also one of the clients in my coaching mastermind. So she's really near and dear to my heart. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear her story because her story is so powerful. And of course, this being the birth experience, Amber, I want you to just say hello, tell who you are. And then I'd love for you to share your birth experience because it was really pivotal in what you do right now.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on today. Like you said, my name is Amber Ginn and I'm a board certified lactation consultant. I have two boys. My oldest now will be 17 in the summer and my youngest is 11. My oldest, I actually gave birth to him 2 weeks before I turned 16. And so that was a very interesting experience for sure. I definitely had all of these ideas about how I wanted my birth to go, and I faced a lot of just discouragement from family. I said I wanted to have a natural birth and I wanted to do all these different things, and everyone was like, that's not possible. I ended up having preeclampsia and ended up with an emergency, air quotes, C-section. And so everything just went out the window as far as my plans. The one little sliver of hope that I had, though, was being able to breastfeed him. And things were really not looking good in the beginning. I was super engorged. I didn't know how to get into latch. I didn't have a pump. I didn't know anything about breastfeeding at all. And I ended up reaching out to the local WIC office and got set up for a visit with a peer counselor there. And she was able to help me get a good latch. She set me up with a breast pump, and having that one win so early on in my experience as a new mom really shaped my entire outlook on life, really, but especially as a mother, because I was able to do something right. And it gave me confidence that I was going to make it through a really hard time. And I was so moved by that experience that I decided I wanted to provide that same care and support to other women. And that's what led me to become an IBCLC.
Okay, so Amber knows me well enough to know I'm not a crier, but I'm actually tearing up right now. Like, what is wrong with me lately? I don't know, but I'm tearing up because couple things. For those of you guys who have not heard my story, I had Ian, my oldest, when I was 17. And you sharing your story just really slapped me in the butt a little and reminded me how much power and influence we have as women and educators and perinatal experts in this space to influence lives. Because I don't know if I told you this, you and I have talked about your story, but my labor and delivery nurse, when I had Ian, her name was Laura Berry, and she whispered in my ear after I delivered, because I don't know about you, but I was made to feel that this was the biggest mistake of my life. I had ruined my life. My future was done. I had already been accepted into an art school for college. I was on this path, and everyone just wanted to remind me how much I had screwed up. And the thing about that is that, number one, if you're listening and you're young and you're pregnant, Amber and I are both proof that you did not screw up. Yes, it's a bump in the road and it's a hard one because we know that, but it's also a woman having a baby. It's still your birth experience. It's still your journey into motherhood. And for anyone listening who's a professional, you better take this role seriously, because these two professionals, your WIC lady, whatever her role was, and my labor nurse, changed the courses of our lives. And it could have went another way.
Yeah, that's very true. And I remember early on in my pregnancy with my first, I had a little bit of bleeding and I went to the emergency room, and I remember there was this nurse, he was a guy, and he was like, I heard him say in passing to the other, I guess, I don't know if it's a nurse's aide or whatnot, but this is why I don't believe in God, because God would never let a teenager have a baby. Like, what a mess, like something to that effect. I remember that bit about not believing in God because God lets teenagers have babies.
I
And I was
mean,
like,
dude,
Jesus.
Mary was like 14 when she had Jesus.
Yeah, so it was just, there's a lot of judgment for sure. I definitely had a lot of condemnation from other people. And, I did really well in school. I was very bright, gifted child or whatever they say. And I remember everyone was just like, what a waste, like it's such a shame. But then I recall when I was about to graduate from high school, because I still stayed in school, I went right back to school. When I graduated with like a 3.9 GPA, a teacher came up to me and he's like, well, I'm so proud of you because you really made it work. So, I mean, yeah, like you're saying, it's a big bump, but you can still do all the stuff you set out to do for sure.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is I did not stay in school because I went to a very fundamentalist private Christian school. I was the first person in like 40 years to get pregnant. And so I became like the pariah of the school. And what was really funny is I was really naive. But here's what I want to tell you listening if you're younger and you haven't had a baby. All it takes is to be alone with the right guy for the right amount of time.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I wasn't some kind of bad girl. I didn't plan on having sex out of marriage, but a surfer and a little bit of time alone, there's Ian. But anyway, now that that's been said, but I love it that she came alongside you, and both of us, our businesses have been born from that desire to help women have a different story, have a better path. And so I would love for you to transition that into what you do now and how you do it and how you run your practice.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, it's really a beautiful thing to think that because of those two women in our lives, how many like thousands of women have been supported like from that. It's really amazing how all of that works. And I hope to that my work with moms hopefully inspires, one of them across time to transition into some type of birth work or breastfeeding work, because it's really, yeah, we don't always realize how much impact we have on other people. But yeah, so at this point now, I run a private practice. I've been in private practice the entire time. I have been an IBCLC. The practice I run is called the Latch Link, and we're really big on trying to revolutionize breastfeeding care because, as we all know, maternal health care in the US is really lacking, but that doesn't stop at breastfeeding care. A lot of the systems we have in place now are just not meeting the needs of mothers. We have close to 11,000 babies born every day in the US, and we have maybe 3,000 lactation consultants in private practice. The way most people run their practices, they can see maybe 3 or 4 clients a day, and that's leaving a lot of mamas on the table who are not getting support. So my heart is just in the place of trying to change that so that moms can get really expert support right from their home, covered by insurance via virtual care, which allows me to support a lot of moms and them to get seen quickly and have just really exceptional, unheard of continuity of care across their entire breastfeeding journey.
I love that. And for those of you guys listening, we're going to put some information in the show notes. Amber takes insurance. So I want you to talk about this thought that you have to see a lactation consultant in person and it's so much better than virtual because of course I work virtually and I know how much power we can have virtually. And I mean, I have students in so many different countries that if it were I only could see them in person, their births would not have been impacted. So I want you to talk about what that looks like to have a virtual consult. And obviously, insurance companies value it because they pay for it.
Yeah, more insurance companies than people realize. And I was talking to a mentor one time about it, about helping moms understand, it's free with insurance. And he was like, no, it's better than free. They already pay for insurance. So they might as well take advantage of this thing. Otherwise, they're just leaving this exceptional support
Yeah.
on the table.
Yeah. You've already paid
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as far as how a virtual consult works, I like to kind of make the analogy of learning to do a pull up. I know that might not be everyone's thing, but if you're trying to learn to do a pull up and someone comes and they hold on to you and they push you up and down, you can do several pull ups, but later when they're not there, you try to do a pull up and you don't know how to do it because you weren't actually taught how to do it. And that's how a lot of lactation care works in person. I completely understand where moms are coming from, that they want someone to come in there and do things hands-on. But it's extremely important that we understand the foundations of why we're doing things in our breastfeeding journey rather than just having someone come and do it for us. Because what happens so often, and I see a lot of moms who have seen people in person, it didn't work out, and then they're coming to me later on. When we have someone come in person and they do it for us, it's our natural instinct to kind of check out and let people do things for us. We want to work smart, not hard. But when we do that during lactation care later in the night when our baby still won't latch, we don't have an extra pair of hands attached to an expert. And so we're back to where we were. And that can be really discouraging for a mom who had to wait several days to get someone to come out in the first place. And that person, like I said, due to the way most lactation consultants run their practice, won't be able to come back for a week or two. They're feeling like completely lost and they waited all this time for this appointment and then now they're not any better off than they were.
Or they have to go somewhere.
Oh, exactly.
Which is even harder when you first have a baby. Yeah, like
for sure.
I wasn't even thinking about someone coming to your house. And like you said, when you have a breastfeeding issue, you need help now. But like when I had Grayson, I had to go to a place to see someone and I had to get an appointment and I had to wait. And that time waiting, especially for me, because Grayson had been diagnosed as failure to thrive. And I had to wait to see someone. And like every minute was like a time bomb thinking, what do I do? Like, I need to do something. He needs to gain weight, So I love that you said that. And for those of you guys listening, like we said, you've already paid for it. You might as well, like, I don't care if you're having a problem or not. I think there's some things you should do during pregnancy. You should learn about breastfeeding. You should see a pelvic floor specialist. You should see a physical therapist. All those things, like only in a man's world does someone think we should wait for our boobs to feel like they're falling off or like our nipple to be burning or our pelvic floor to be giving out before we actually do something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true.
So I love that. I love what you're doing. And also you have in the works a monthly or bi-monthly workshop coming. Maybe you could tell everybody about that as well.
Yeah, so for prenatal consults, which I absolutely love to do, I'm working on hosting bi-monthly group consults where you can come in and get all of your questions answered. And my practice, rather than just pushing a narrative about what I think moms need to know, I like to be really collaborative in my education and care plans and whatnot. So it would just be an overview of what you might want to know about breastfeeding during your pregnancy so that you're set up for success. And then it would open up for a Q&A, because that's what really, it breaks my heart a lot working with mothers is I know like if they could have gotten support during their pregnancy, they wouldn't be dealing with the situation they have now. And I absolutely adore working with my mamas prenatally, but it's kind of funny because when we do our check-ins afterward, like 95% of the time, they're like, yeah, I'm good. Talk to you later. I'll let you know. I'll let you know when we're ready for solids. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I'll see you later. I'm so happy for them.
And insurance pays for the workshop as well.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So with qualifying insurance, the workshop is completely covered. So you get that expert care right then and there. And another thing I wanted to mention too is a lot of times moms are wrapped up in in-home care. And while that's really, or in-person care, rather, let me say, that's really, I get where they're coming from. A lot of times we're really limited by the type of practitioner that is near us. And we're not always going to be able to guarantee that they have values or beliefs or whatever that are aligned with us. Just like you're saying, supporting moms. If moms were limited to only getting prenatal education and education about their births from the person who happened to be in their zip code, it would be very limiting. So I always want moms to reframe things like that you're not stuck with a lady who just happens to be within 30 minutes of your house.
Yeah. And I can tell you right now. So for those of you guys, Amber and I are on video. I know that when I went to the lactation consultant, it was a very boring hospital office and she didn't have boobs all over the walls like Amber does.
Thanks. I try.
Yeah. We all adore Amber's background, which I have vaginas and stuff. So there's
That's
that.
That's good too.
Anyway, so what do you feel is one of the most important things that a mom should know about breastfeeding while she's pregnant? Let's say you have a mom who's like, I might not, I'm not sure. Like, what would you want to say to her?
So I would want her to really dig deep into the why behind her breastfeeding or infant feeding goals. I talk to a lot of mothers, typically postpartum, And, many of them who are in a place where they might want to quit, they might want to give up, they might want to do this or that. And many of them have never taken any time to like journal or write out pros and cons or even explore like why it is they want to do what they are doing. So I would say everyone who's pregnant, think about what are your goals for infant feeding and breastfeeding, and then go a few whys deep on why those are your goals. That way you can really understand, because if you don't understand why you want to do something, it's going to be nearly impossible to stick it out because you're not going to be motivated. You're
Yeah.
just doing it because your mother-in-law told you to, or, what have you.
Yeah, I love that. I say the same thing to my ladies about the birth, especially the ones who want to go unmedicated. Like, you have to be so married to your why. And I would say the same thing with breastfeeding because it's a hard journey at times. It's a beautiful, amazing journey, but it's also hard. And it can be like, like it is a huge commitment.
For sure. Yeah.
I feel like it's way easier than bottle feeding though, because I had to supplement Grayson and it was so much work.
Yeah,
Whereas you can
definitely.
just whip your boob out and feed your baby. Like it's warmed, it's clean, it's all the
Exactly.
things. Bottles are a lot of work, but not that I'm knocking that because I support whatever someone wants to do. Okay, so now we've got a mom. This was my big thing in the hospital that I was so surprised about when and I've told you this before, I've breastfed. I mean, I spent pretty much the entire 90s breastfeeding. I think 1994 might have been, no, maybe it was 93. Maybe 93 was the only year. I don't know. I spent most of the 90s breastfeeding. And so when I became a labor nurse, I was like, I'm going to be an expert at this. Like, I am the breastfeeding guru. And I have never sweat or had my back hurt as bad as helping a new mom. And what I found was a lot of the new moms, because they weren't prepared, they were not educated in any way besides maybe watching a YouTube video, they did not know what to do at all. And then you add in the pure exhaustion from giving birth. And so what I found is a lot of them were just laying there, like they're wanting me to do it all.
Right.
And I can't even tell you how many thousand times I've said, Mama, I'm not going home with you. Like, you have to do this. So I feel like it's so brilliant for them to learn ahead of time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I have a lot of moms who I'm working with, and they don't even realize that they don't have to latch their baby straight away. I think a lot of people, they have that pressure in the hospital, and I understand nurses are wanting to help, but they don't even understand that they have the agency to do it themselves or to let baby wait, because so many moms are just expecting a nurse to come in and do it for them, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And do it all.
Right.
Like, really do it all. And I love that you brought that up because in the beginning of my career, we were like pressured, like get the baby on, get the baby on, get the baby on. Now it's not the same. Like, now we know. So let's say a baby's just born. How long can they go? Now, obviously, if they're GDM or something, it might be a
Right.
little different. But
Yeah.
what would you say if a mom can't get her baby latched in the first couple hours? Should you be freaking out?
I mean, when you think about the stores of energy that a newborn is born with, just not to get all complicated, but they're going to be okay for a bit. We definitely don't want them going probably like 12 hours. That's likely too long, and we're going to need to do fluids and different things. But I think within the first like 4 to 6 hours, I think within the first 4 hours is completely normal. After that, I would say between 4 and 6 is when you want to try to get something going. But there's definitely within the first 2 hours, no problem. It's not something that you need to be rushing within that first 2 hours for sure. But I would say even within the first 4 hours is totally within the realm of normal.
And I have another thing that maybe you don't ever think about, but one thing that always bothers me in the hospital, and I tell my students, is that a lot of times we're like, get the baby on, get the baby on. Have you fed the baby? Has the baby, latch? Then mom gets the baby latched. And then the hospital crew wants to come in and disrupt it. Like, let's move rooms. Let's do
Oh,
that.
I
Let's do
know.
that. And I'm like, I always tell my students, like, if you've gotten that big, because sometimes it's really hard to get them latched on when you're
Yeah.
both first learning. If you guys have your baby latched and the baby's doing well, you can tell the hearing test guy, you can tell the lab, you can tell the nurses to come back.
Oh yeah, for sure. I tell all of my prenatal clients that like you're allowed to request that uninterrupted skin to skin. Any examinations that are not emergent, they can do right there with baby on you. And if you're worried it'll disrupt your latch, then yeah, exactly. Be like, no, thank you. You can come back. That's good advice for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm so glad we talked about that because I haven't ever really talked about anyone outside of my labor nurse mama land about that. But that always bothered me. Like, even when I would deliver a mom and she finally gets the baby latched and they're like, you need to take her to the postpartum room. Like, I don't care. I'm like, no, I am not. They're going to have to wait. Like,
Yeah.
she'll go when she's ready. Like,
Right.
the
For
baby
sure.
feeding and that experience should not be interrupted. It really is maddening to me. Okay, so we've talked about prenatal. What do you see as the biggest struggles that most of the people who come to you, what are the big top, like, one or two struggles that they're having?
Yeah, so I would say the top 3 would be latching, supply, and then pumping, but the big 2 I would say for sure that are a little bit trickier is latching and supply, which I think we don't prepare women for the foundations of how to get a good latch, because I liken it to like a child watching a choreography on like a music video and then trying to redo it. That's how most women are doing breastfeeding. They've seen someone do it and they're like, I think it's kind of like this, but no one's explained to them like the body mechanics of their baby or positioning tips and tweaks and whatnot. And it really, I don't know, it can go a long way to understand the why of what you're doing, because then it's more adaptable rather than, like I said, just trying to emulate what you've seen someone doing just because you think that's what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, I love that because it is so true. And I think that's what our mothers and grandmothers were led to believe, like, oh, it just happens. Like, it's natural. Like, that's what your body's supposed to do. And I always would tell my students now, I mean, my patients, like, anything you've seen on TV for breastfeeding, they have edited out the crying, the difficulty, that, any of the problems, and they've just shown you the picture perfect side of it.
Exactly.
But it's because I think a lot of moms think it's supposed to just come naturally.
Right, for sure. And I guess in like a perfect world, and that's what I always talk to my clients about is like what is optimal versus what's normal. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd all have grown up watching our moms, have these really empowered births and then totally crush it at breastfeeding all of our siblings. And we'd see our sisters and aunts and everyone. We'd see it all the time and it would be commonplace for us. But most of us, like you said, we're only seeing what we're seeing on TV. And that's always like a polished, edited version. Because
Edited.
yeah, God help
Yeah.
us if we only saw birth like on TV and it's just always just like women
Yeah.
screaming and freaking out. So which can be birth
Pulling
sometimes,
her
but
hair out,
it's
biting
not
her
the only way.
partner.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I have gotten bit though before
Oh no.
at the hospital, by the
Uh-oh.
way. Yes. But it was not during, like, it was when someone was putting her IV in.
Ooh,
She bit me. Yeah, it was
ouch.
really weird. I was like, I am not going to be at this birth. But yes, I agree. You know what? Now that you're saying that, like, all of my children my sons obviously should be very comfortable around breastfeeding because they've seen it. But my daughters should be very comfortable with it because everybody saw me breastfeeding a lot.
Good. That's very good.
Yeah. And I was very comfortable with it. But they did see my troubles with Grayson as well.
Yeah, and I think
So
that's
they
important
also
too.
saw me seeking help. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And I would say nowadays with the whole supply thing, I mean, latching is one piece, but supply is another. I think all of these influencers and whatnot that we see on TikTok and Instagram telling women how they should be making 10 or 12 ounces of milk at a time. I think
Oh my
most women
God, and
have no,
they have a filled
right. A
outside
freezer.
freezer.
I know, like what you could put a whole
What? You don't
deer
need
in.
that.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, I did a post a couple years ago saying you do not need a full freezer of
Right.
milk.
Ugh, I know. It's so wild.
But it
Yeah.
makes them subconsciously think that if they don't have those trays and trays and
Mm-hmm.
stashes, I never could do a pump well. I never could pump well. So that is another thing I'd love to talk about before we end
Yeah.
is pump tips. When do you recommend let's say, because I have a lot of moms who are going back to work at
Oh
like
yeah.
8 to 12 weeks. What is your process you teach?
Yeah, so I would say prenatally, definitely get a non-wearable pump as your primary choice. If you have the ability, like don't rely on a wearable for your exclusive pumping. In most cases, that's not going to support you like you need. If you're already
Why?
postpartum,
Tell us why.
okay,
Tell
so
us why I know, but I want
yeah,
them to know.
the
Yeah.
motors are definitely a little bit shaky. Most women store the pump with the motor and the reservoir of milk together. And when you store it that way, if any amount of milk gets in that motor, it's going to cut down on its efficiency. But again, since it needs to be charged, even just simply using it throughout the day, if you're not keeping it charged all the time, it's going to have low efficiency. And the tunnels are really shallow. So for most women, especially women who have like elastic nipples, etc., it's just not going to provide the space and stimulation that you need. So I'm not anti wearable pumps by any means. I just think that we want to be informed when making decisions. So I would say making sure you have a pump for your body and for your goals, and also making sure the darn flanges fit correctly, because so many people don't realize that the flanges that come in the pumps are pretty much never the right flanges for 99% of women, I feel like, in most cases.
And so they need to make sure that that fits. So
For sure.
you recommend they get a real full on breast pump while they're pregnant to have for after baby. And then if they're going back to work, do you have a pattern? Like, do you recommend they start pumping at a certain time, or what is your go-to there?
So if I were, I definitely think working with a lactation professional to have a back to work plan is obviously like the primo choice. But if you're just thinking more generally, it really depends on your goals and what you're hoping to accomplish, during your maternity leave. But generally, I would say you'd want to start pumping and introducing a bottle if that's what baby's going to use while they're apart from you, probably 4-ish weeks, 4 to 6 weeks before you're returning to work. Just speaking generally, I have some moms who book a consult with me and they're like, I'm going back to work next week. My baby's never taken a bottle. And we're able to totally fix it, right? That's a little
Yeah.
stressful for everyone.
Okay, so
but,
that was my
but it
next
works.
question. So if they can't get the baby to take a bottle, that's even a reason to have a consultation with you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So personally, I'm very well trained and experienced with bottle refusal, and I would say that makes up maybe like 30% of the consults that I do. So bottle refusal is one of those things that it can
I had
happen.
no idea
Oh,
you
yeah.
handle that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love doing bottle refusal clients. It's a really like it's a very stressful situation, but it's so awesome to get through that. And I've got a lot of really cool protocols and whatnot that I use within my practice. So yeah, I mean, and honestly though, bottle refusal, like fear of bottle refusal, is not a reason to introduce a bottle sooner than you want to, because I've had babies who suddenly refuse bottles after using bottles really well for a while, or babies who, have been exclusively breastfed and then they do really well in a bottle just out of nowhere. So it's one of those things, you just want to make sure that you don't feel pressured into using a bottle sooner. I mean, totally use one whenever you want, but you don't like have to start one soon to avoid refusal. It's not quite that simple.
And we will put Amber's information in the show notes. Make sure you tell her that Labor Nurse Mama sent you. And so if there's someone listening and they're having trouble with bottle refusal, their insurance will cover a
Oh yeah.
consultation with you.
Oh yeah. And I guess
That's new
yeah.
to me.
Right. So that's one thing that I want to make abundantly clear to moms. Lactation care is not just for putting out fires. It's not just for when you feel like your nipples are falling off. I have clients who see me across time, whether it's for bottle refusal, returning to work, wanting to talk over like your birth control options. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but just getting my feedback as a lactation consultant, literally anything related to breastfeeding. So if it's related to breastfeeding and infant feeding at all, and exclusively pumping is breastfeeding, so you don't have to even be doing any feeding at the boob. If your boobs are involved in making milk, then you're
Yeah.
covered. You're covered.
And then you said something before about transitioning into like foods. You help with that as well?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, when I did my clinical training, I shadowed, of course, IBCLCs, but I also got to spend a lot of time working in a clinic with a baby led weaning expert. And so, in addition to being an IBCLC, I'm also an infant and young child feeding specialist. So I'm trained in baby led weaning and introducing solids, both BLW and purees. So I love helping clients with that as well. So pretty much anything related to feeding your baby, I'm your girl.
I love that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So that really is amazing, because I think that for me as a breastfeeding mom, the difficulties with latching and pain, and then I could barely get any of my kids to take a bottle. Like
Oh.
that in itself, and I could not get a pump to work. So those two things, I don't think I would have ever thought about going to a lactation consultant for,
Yep, we help with
you
all of
know?
those things for sure. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like a lot of lactation consultants make it so uncomfortable to talk about bottles in any way that I
Yeah.
think a lot of moms do not think that they will cover that subject with them,
Oh, yeah, and no,
which
I've
is
noticed that
really
too with
sad.
yeah, even with talking about formula. A lot of IBCLCs don't wanna give any recommendations or opinions about formula. I run my practice completely differently. I understand the reality that some moms use formula, and I'm completely
Yeah.
happy to help moms find a good one with no shame and no BS, because nobody has time for that. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
am pro whatever works for your journey.
Yeah, well, and that's what my students say about me. They're like, Trish lays it out like a buffet or a smorgasbord, and then she teaches you about all the things, and then you choose. Because the reason I do this is because I was sick of seeing women stripped of their autonomy and their voices were taken. And so I am never going to shame or pressure someone into a choice that I think they should make. Now, one of my students, let's say I have one of my moms and she has her labor bat signal going and she is like, I think my doctor's saying I have to be induced. So I will talk through, okay, so they're saying you have to be. Did you ask them this? How do you feel about that choice? If she says, I'm totally fine, I'm ready, then that's that. That's the choice,
Yeah.
If she's like, I just don't really know if I want to do that, Trish, what do you think? Then I'll tell her like what I would potentially do, So
Right.
I think that's what's important. If any of you guys are listening and you lean into mom shame or pressuring, you need to step back. The last thing we need in this journey is someone invalidating our choices. And I tell my kids all the time, like, I'm going to make mistakes. Like, I'll make mistakes, but that's on me, as long as I'm not harming someone. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
these moms have a right to choose what they want for their babies, for their journey, and it's okay. Release it. It's like we talked about at the mastermind retreat. Let them.
Right.
Like if
Exactly.
everybody could adopt the let them theory and let other people feel how they want. No, like how boring of a world would it be if we all felt the exact same way about everything?
For sure.
Like
Yeah.
what fun would that be?
I know. Yeah, for sure. And I think society, babies, all of us, we benefit a lot more from moms having sovereignty over those choices and feeling confident in them, even if they're not, whatever the WHO would consider the best choices. Because, like, at the end of the day, you're a mom, your kids are older too. Like, your kids are even older than mine. So,
Yeah.
like, we all know by the time they get older, like, they don't, you're doing your best and they love you and they're proud of you
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah. And you want to raise humans that are healthy minded and make choices. And if you yourself are being narrowed into choices and made to feel, then you're going to pass that on too. And we need to stop. Like it has to stop. I mean, it just has to stop, but that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about consultations and that you take insurance. We've talked about your prenatal workshop, which we'll make sure you guys get information on all of this. Can you tell everyone where they can find you? Tell them about your podcast.
Yes, yes. So my business, like I said, is called The Latch Link. You can find me online at thelatchlink.com. My podcast is called The Latch Lounge, and you can find me on social media at Amber the IBCLC.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Wow, if that didn't give you chills, I don't know what will. Amber's story is such a reminder to us that your struggles can become stepping stones. And when you show up with purpose, the right people will find you. I am so grateful she's in my life. If you love this episode, take a screenshot and tag us on Instagram. Tag at labornursemama.com and Amber Ginn IBCLC. As always, you guys, hit subscribe. Leave a darn tootin' review. They mean so much to me. You guys, this is so important. Please take a moment. Leave me a review. Say hello. Tell me what you want to hear more of. Give me some ideas. What do you guys want to hear? And if you want to share your birth story, send us an email at info@labornursemama.com. We have a lot of people applying, so give us time to get back to you. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and I'll see you again next Friday. Bye for now.